I also want to call out the confusion that I think a lot of us have. I mean, us being those of us that think about and study AI and those of us that don't. Like, I agree with what Aaron just said, and I want to kind of point out why I agree with it. What Aaron's basically saying is that the concept of what is agentic or what is an agent is a spectrum, but it definitely, almost by definition, has to have some kind of tool use. Like even if it's like, how do I put this? Even if it's just going and doing some, Aaron, the tool that you gave an example of, like, go do some research for me. The tool that it's using is internet search, right? So the fact that it has its own ability to do internet search and not just answer a question from its training data, right? Or an attachment I gave it. So it can go outside of its current context window, right? And go pull something into its context window and do something for me. In the one case, it's going and doing search and then compiling that, thinking it through and giving me an answer about a travel trip. And the other example you gave, which I thought was a good one, is I'm going to give it access to my inbox, sent and inbox both, and I'm going to ask it to do something for me. I'm giving it now, in both cases, I gave it a task, not just a question, and it's completing that task for me with some tool use. I do feel that that is a form of agentic behavior on the part of the AI system. I went from question and answer to task, but as the task becomes more complex with more tools and longer running and starts to involve things like memory, proactivity, scheduling, now you're getting into, like, it starts to feel like a coworker. So
this is AI First with Adam and Andy, the show that takes you straight to the front lines of AI innovation in business. I'm Andy Sack, and alongside my co-host, Adam Brotman, each episode, we bring you candid conversations with business leaders transforming their businesses with AI. No fluff, just real talk, actionable use cases, and insights for you. Super excited about today's episode. We're continuing down the path of our exploration of agents in enterprise with a specific focus on agentic marketing today. And our guest happens to be a domain expert, also a friend of both Adam and I. Allow me to introduce Aaron Bird. Aaron,
thanks,
welcome.
Andy. Yeah, excited to be here.
Aaron, you want to just, for the audience, just, I think, introduce yourself first, but then also your company and what your company does. And then we'll get into the conversation on agentic marketing.
Yeah. So I'm Aaron Bird. I'm the co-founder and CEO at Inflection, inflection.io. AI native marketing automation. We focus on B2B. So our customers are all B2B. And I've been building in the MarTech space for maybe like 15 years. Before this, I ran product at Marketo, a legacy B2B marketing automation provider that Adobe now owns. And before that, I was the co-founder and CEO of a company called Visible, and we pioneered B2B marketing attribution. So kind of marketing measurement for B2B companies and tying marketing activity to revenue. We sold the company to Marketo, and that's how I transitioned to run product there. And then long ago, I was at Microsoft in the ads platform there. So I've been in, like, generally in MarTech for a while, and honestly super excited about the phase we're in. You know, I've got enough gray hair to remember the .com boom, and I was kind of graduated from college back then, and this feels just like the same thing, like the transformation that happened with the internet. You know, I was a very young person at the time and kind of watched all that happen, and this feels identical. It's just moving so fast, and it's just so fun to be building right now. And I'm excited to talk about that.
Awesome. Adam, do you have a question you want to tee us off with Aaron?
Yeah, Aaron, I'd say the first question is, can you explain as best you can, because you're deep in the forest for the trees, like, to someone who doesn't know what we mean by agentic marketing. Like, let's go all the way back up to the right altitude. People know what it's like to chat with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini. Even on a semi-advanced level, they prompt, they might attach a document, they might ask it to do some kind of tool call, like, whatever. What do we mean? What do you mean? And what's the difference between what people normally experience with like a chat bot, a version of AI versus an agentic marketing agent?
Yeah. Okay. I'll do my best on kind of simplifying it. I think of this as there's two phases here. The first phase, I'll oversimplify and say marketing agents are going to do things that humans used to do, but way faster and likely way better too. But limited there by humans could have done this, by the way. Okay. The thing it's going to go do for you, you could have done. Now, maybe you wouldn't have done it because it would have taken too long. You didn't have the time to do it, but you could have, or your team could have,
Aaron,
right?
and Aaron, on that
Yeah.
first phase, when you say
Yeah.
humans could have done it, can give me just one example of like what you're talking about?
Yeah, sure. So like to make it super tangible for marketing, let's say you want to go run a marketing campaign, a marketing program, right? I have a thing I want to go do. I have an audience that I want to communicate a message to, right? Classic, like marketing teams do this all day long. You start with, I have a goal in mind, right? Like I want to get this message to this audience to try to achieve this business objective, whether it's to come buy my product or gain awareness or differentiate against a competitor or whatever it is, right? So you typically you'll start with a plan, like a brief, right? Like the CMO says, go get market penetration here, or change the perception of our product in this market, whatever it is. And so you have a goal, you'll write this brief, like a campaign brief, right? This is what we're trying to do. Let's put a finer point on the audience. How are we going to do it? What channels are we going to use, et cetera? And then what do you do? Well, you're going to go execute it. All right. So that means writing content, maybe buying media, whatever, like depending on, maybe you're going to have to go do some sponsorship to conferences, or you're going to run ads on TV or whatever. There's the actual execution, right? So there's a plan and then an execution, to oversimplify it. Today, humans do that. Like pre-agents, pre-AI, humans wrote the plan, humans did all of the execution. They were aided by software, obviously, in helping to do the execution. You're going to go buy ads somewhere. You're gonna have some software help you do that. You're gonna do a podcast. Software's gonna help you do that, but humans are gonna do it. Like without a human, nothing gets done. Agents, step one, the phase one of agents. Agents can do everything we just said. So CMO could just say, I want more. The one paragraph a CMO might give a team that might lead to 500 hours of work over a 6-month period, right? That one paragraph that the CMO says in a meeting and says, go do this. The CMO can give that to an agent. It can create the plan. It can go execute all the steps of the plan without humans, if you want. Humans can be in the loop too, et cetera. But mostly the point being, the agent does the thing that humans used to do.
So that's phase one.
That's phase one. Exactly. One thing that's worth noting, like that, and we all experience this with ChatGPT, like ChatGPT does things like the classic consumer use case of ChatGPT is research. Go do a bunch of research for me and just give me the distilled answer. This is something we see all the time. Like my back's bothering me and this and that and whatever, and it's like, boom, here's the answer. That person could have done the research. It might have taken them 2 hours, but they could have done it. The reality is they wouldn't have, right? We're all using ChatGPT to now do things we wouldn't have done, but we could have done. The reason why we wouldn't have is we wouldn't have had the time to go do all the effort that AI can do for you, right? So this phase one is that it does things that humans could do, but because the human doesn't have to do it, and I can run many agents all at the same time, I now get to do things that I wouldn't have done. So like my to-do list, right? Or organization's backlog of things they want to go do, you now get to go below the line, right? You get to go run experiments that you couldn't have run before or wouldn't have run before because you have your time out, your team is finite in size, and you have to draw a line on like what you're going to get done. I think it's worth pointing out that I use the words a person could do it because it matters in what's possible, okay? Because phase two is doing things that weren't possible before, but these things were possible, but you weren't going to go do all the things. And that's the beauty of agents is that you maybe could have gotten 10 things done this quarter with humans only. Now you get to do 50 things or 100 things with agents. And so that does open up a lot of capabilities. So this phase one is still like massive in the transformation. But the things that get done are things that humans could have done, right? We're going to unpack this because there's a lot here. But one of the constructs there is that agents are doing things using the same tools that humans used to get the work done, okay? And we see this with like OpenClaw as an example. What's it doing? It's using the same tools you do. Like if you give it rights to your email, it goes into the browser and it sends emails on your behalf, right? It's using the same tools humans use to get things done. In phase two, we now are using agents to do things that humans couldn't do. And that's because the agents are now part of the tooling. They're not sitting on top of the tooling, right? So one example would be in the world of marketing and is being able to let's say you in B2B, I'll use a B2B example here. You sponsor a conference. And so people are scanning badges. They're coming by your booth, right? At the end of the conference, you had 1,000 people come by your booth. All right. In the what humans can do world, you want to follow up with those 1,000, right? Because they came by your booth, they had a conversation with somebody. And you're going to do something simple like, let's take the cream off the top, the executives that came by. I'm going to have a human handwrite notes to them. I'm going to go and look at if I had my ideal customers profile come by the booth, I'm going to handwrite notes to them. But of the 1,000, maybe 800 don't fit into those categories. I'm going to send a pseudo personalized email to those 800 that says thanks for coming by the booth. If you'd like a demo, here's a link to the demo. Maybe it personalizes by industry or something like that. In phase two, AI can handwrite literally the perfect note to every one of those 1,000 attendees, doing hours of research about them you don't have enough people to go do that, right? And can do it in real time too. So maybe after scanning the badge, it waits 30 minutes and then it sends that personalized note, right? And so your tooling itself is agentic instead of you're having an agent sit on top of your tooling. In the consumer world, it might be
Aaron, can I interrupt for a moment? So
Yep.
You just laid out two phases. And that second example you used with the 1,000, you're basically talking about agents being involved in the tooling, and you gave 1,000 customers coming to the conference. One could have a bunch of interns go do research on the 1,000 people and handwrite personalized messages. I thought what you were going to say was that there's a level of marketing that goes on in agentic marketing in phase two, where it's truly humans could not do it. And maybe that's what you meant with that example,
yeah.
But I actually kind of want clarification on that.
Sure. That's true. Maybe that wasn't the best, but in the consumer world, we've talked for 30 years about right message, right moment, right time. This is even maybe since the dawn of digital marketing, that's been a promise, or probably more of an aspiration. In the consumer world, if you could have your product marketer sitting, ready to talk to everybody who comes to your website and have an infinitely long conversation with them. Someone who's knows your product, the market, everything inside and out, and could have a one-on-one conversation with that consumer for the rest of that consumer's life with all of the context of all the conversations they've ever had with them, right? That's what an agent can do, right? Maybe I could hire 10 million product marketers. I could train all of them perfectly.
It's fair.
But the scale piece, I guess, is maybe the tipping point here of that really true one-to-one communication with an infinite amount of context, right? That humans just don't have.
So it's scale and speed is what you're talking about in that instance, right? The speed with which it can happen and the scale and the personalization. And there's no question that the promise of AI in marketing has scalable personalization is one of them. There are two areas of this where I see AI playing out in marketing. One is marketing strategy, and the other is the whole, move 37, right? Being able to analyze some other alternate, I guess it's marketing strategy, some other marketing move that is more cost effective that you would never have thought of, that a totally different market that you're not even going after, that kind of AI insight into marketing.
Yeah, I think so. I think the scale and speed piece around testing, when I think about exploring those moves that you wouldn't have made, a big part of discovering a potential move is to do testing to see does this resonate, or is this a market that's interesting for me? And again, having agents enable you to do a type of scale of testing that you couldn't have done before, that wouldn't have let you explore those, really unlikely nooks and crannies way, way down the list, right? And so I do think you need it deeply embedded in the tooling, to kind of have it be able to explore those options. And you need this planning step of an agent to go come up with crazy ideas that maybe even a human wouldn't have, and then go test those ideas, right? And then come back to you and say, like, here's something that is a narrative violation and that you should go look at that might be something that's a really big opportunity for you.
So Aaron, can you go back though? And so that all made sense. Like, what an agent can do that allows you to go faster and stronger, and especially in phase 2, but even in phase 1 to do things you wouldn't have done. And so they become like this coworker slash augmentation of your entire staff, not just of an individual person. And it basically uplifts your capability set, your effectiveness as a marketing organization or as a company. So I get that, but go back again to somebody and explain to our audience, and explain to me even, like what in your mind makes an agent versus just a really capable frontier model chat?
Yeah, I think you mean kind of comparing the call and response
No,
experience of a typical.
Sorry, Aaron, you're too smart and you know all this stuff. Pretend you're talking to someone who doesn't know all these terms, like
You're
embedded in the
talking to Adam's
tooling.
mother.
So, like, what I'm getting at is like, let me make it really like simple for you to answer. Oh, I'm on the ChatGPT Pro account. Is that an agent? Do I have an agent at my disposal?
Yeah, I mean, in my view, you do. Like ChatGPT in and of itself is an agent. There's one step here that really starts to unlock things that consumers can do in their ChatGPT experience, as well as enterprises are doing real actively, is you can give it access to tools. In a consumer simple example, I'm overwhelmed with my inbox. Okay. And I just got back from vacation and I want to get to inbox zero. You can connect ChatGPT, your consumer version of ChatGPT, to your Gmail. And you could say, first of all, let's do some smart stuff. So go look at all my past responses, or the last 2 months of past responses to see what do I seem to care about? What do I respond to? And now go to my inbox, my unread, and go ahead and like archive the things that I probably won't care about. And the ones that I am going to care about, draft a response, put it in my drafts, and then I'll go review the drafts, and then maybe I'll be able to send them all. Or if you want a YOLO, you could be like, go respond to all of them for me, right? And so that ChatGPT can do the thing I just said, and it could, and this goes back to like doing things humans do today or can do. You give it access to your Gmail tool that then lets it act as an agent for you on top of Gmail. Right? Even the research case in my mind is it's an agent. Like if I say I want to go to Italy next summer, and we like towns that look like Florence, but it's too big and, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And we're going during this week and I want to rent a car and, plan the trip for me. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
It's going to do a bunch of internet research and like look at, travel sites and stuff. And so it's an agent. I mean, it's doing things
Right.
that I would have had to go do as a human, and it's doing it way faster. Yeah.
Let me interrupt. Adam, do you agree with that definition?
Yeah, I do. But I also want to call out the confusion that I think a lot of us have. I mean, us being those of us that think about and study AI and those of us that don't. Like, I agree with what Aaron just said, and I want to kind of point out why I agree with it. What Aaron's basically saying is that the concept of what is agentic or what is an agent is a spectrum, but it definitely, almost by definition, has to have some kind of tool use. Like even if it's like, how do I put this? Even if it's just going and doing some, Aaron, the tool that you gave an example of, like, go do some research for me. The tool that it's using is internet search, right? So the fact that it has its own ability to do internet search and not just answer a question from its training data, right? Or an attachment I gave it. So it can go outside of its current context window, right? And go pull something into its context window and do something for me. In the one case, it's going and doing search and then compiling that, thinking it through and giving me an answer about a travel trip. And the other example you gave, which I thought was a good one, is I'm going to give it access to my inbox, sent and inbox both, and I'm going to ask it to do something for me I'm giving it now. In both cases, I gave it a task, not just a question, and it's completing that task for me with some tool use. I do feel that is a form of agentic behavior on the part of the AI system. I went from question and answer to task, but as the task becomes more complex with more tools and longer running and starts to involve things like memory, proactivity, scheduling, now you're getting into like, it starts to feel like a coworker. So And I think,
So
Aaron, what you
that's
said,
actually, that spectrum's really good. I'm glad you nailed that. That was well done, Adam.
yeah, well, thanks. As you know, we've been thinking a lot about it in the last
No, but I got to
couple
say, you
months.
even clarified it for me because I heard Aaron's response and I was like, huh, do I really think of ChatGPT as an agent? I kind of don't. Like,
No,
I consider deep research an agent within ChatGPT, but your point of the Q&A distinguished from the task and then multitask with reasoning, like that spectrum's a really nice spectrum.
yeah, I think so. Let's talk about that. Aaron, I'll kind of turn it back to you since you're our esteemed guest here and you're an expert in this area. So let's go back to marketing, agentic marketing systems, and like the future of work as marketers. Let's flash forward to. I don't know what your timeline is for phase 1 or phase 2 and what becomes, but don't worry about that as much as the following. 2028, okay? I want you to project out to 2028, and it's not because of the Centrini research report, but because I just want to pick a time frame that's about a year and a half to 2 years out, and be like, I'm a marketer, I'm a CMO, or I'm just like a leader in a marketing department, maybe not the CMO. How is my life different in 2028 than it is in 2026 or 2025? Because I think 2026 starts to take on some of the flavors of this stuff. What does it look like? What does all this stuff we're talking about mean to me as a marketer?
Yeah, I think that, so I'll answer this and then I liked your spectrum thing and I've got a couple things on that too. But I think, so to answer this one, I think, and I really do believe this, for those of us that are like deep in tech and building AI, I think the moment ChatGPT like came out, we all saw this future that I'm about to describe. But in some ways, it was like, for me, it was like when I went to college, 25 years ago, I knew quantum computers were going to be a thing in my lifetime, but I didn't know if it was going to be in like 2010 or 2070. And so that was my moment with ChatGPT. I know this is going to happen in my lifetime, but I don't know if it's going to be 2028 or like 2070. But now I'm pretty sure it's going to be 2028. And you're going to be an orchestrator of tasks of agents. And you mentioned like a marketing leader. The cool thing here, this is true about a marketing leader, but it's true about the entire marketing team, including the individual contributors, which is, for me, that's the big unlock. When we thought about like, how do we talk about our product? For a long time, we talked about everybody's a CMO now, because I think that ICs now have a team of amazing experts and as many as they want to spin up that work for them. And it's super empowering.
And
And
Aaron,
so
you're
in
talking about
2020,
agents. Sorry, when you say a team with your
agents, a
product, it's
team
an
of
agent.
agents. Exactly.
Yeah.
A team of
Not,
agents.
not humans, not humans.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so I'll even answer your question. Forget about the marketing leader because they've had this superpower for a while. They've been limited by like how many teams they have and how many people they can hire, but like they at least had people that would go do work for them and they could think at a higher level. Every marketing individual contributor now has that superpower. And so their day looks like checking in on projects. Okay. Reviewing becomes a massive skill set, like advancement that we all have to get good at. Again, leaders have been doing this for a little while. ICs maybe not as much, but reviewing other people's work. We could also, if you want, like, the function that's the furthest along here is engineering because of code gen and everything. So that function is like people are doing this today. I think marketers and other functions are a little further behind, but it's the bookends of the process that become the most important. But what are we actually trying to do? The planning phase and then the verification phase. Okay. And so an individual contributor will have like 20 projects that agents are working on for them. And they'll be checking in on probably if they've already started on the verification phase, or maybe they're kicking off some new projects and they're iterating on that planning phase. But most of our time today is spent in the execution phase for most individual contributors. That actually goes to zero. And you collaborate with an agent to get the right plan. And then it goes and does work. And then you review the output to figure out if we're happy with it. And so I think that change in process, 2028, every marketer is doing this where they're planning with agents and then they're reviewing output and figuring out like, did we hit kind of what we wanted?
Aaron, can you talk, seeing as we're talking about 2028, how does the marketing organization change? Like, how does it change structurally, count of employee? Like, how does it change?
Yeah. Honestly, this is a real tough one. The thing I just said, I'm highly confident on. This one, I'm like, I have a lot
You're
more
gonna whatever you
uncertainty.
say is wrong, but you're more informed about this than both
Exactly.
Adam and I, and you're more informed about this than our audience. So give us your best guess. How does the marketing? I mean, Adam and I have gotten very interested in what the future of work and what the future of organizations look like. And I'll preface it to say that I think organizational structure is going to change as a result of AI and agentic AI. You know, everyone talks about layoffs, but I actually don't even think it's about layoffs. I actually think the departmental structures change. So that's what's underlying my question. You have a lens that's very marketing centric. So you can talk both about the marketing department, but also sales and how it fits in
Yeah.
the organization. That's what I'm asking.
So I think that it's not just about marketing; it's about the whole company. I think about the customer experience. So I build marketing technology, and I'm a product focused kind of CEO. And so for me, everything is about the customer experience. Now, not the customer experience you designed, but the actual experience the customer had or has, right? And so if we look at this through the customer experience lens for a minute, I think, and then we layer in agents, we'll then see how the org ends up reacting. And I'll use the B2B as an example. In the B2B world, if a company gets large enough, they have from the beginning of the customer experience to the end or the tail of long-term customers, there's probably like 30 people that have siloed jobs that own little tiny slices of this customer experience. So there's the website. Okay. So there's a web team that owns the website. There's a product marketing team that owns the general positioning of the website. Once you get to the website, maybe there's a chat there with an SDR that you can talk to, right? And that person, all they do is just interact with chat, like this one stage of the funnel, right? And then you aren't ready to buy yet. So you download some white papers. Well, again, there's a content team that just focuses on top of the funnel white papers, right? And then, okay, you raise your hand and you fill out a demo form. Now you talk to an inbound SDR that's going to qualify you. And then they hand you off to an account executive who helps to close the deal. And then they hand you off deals closed, onboarding, procurement. Actually, before the deal's closed, you talk to the procurement team. And then the deal closes. And then you talk to your onboarding specialist to get onboarded. And then now you have a CSM that helps you in your first year. And when you file a ticket, you get a support agent, a person that's focused on support. Long-winded, lots of people. Is that what I wanted? Like, can you give me more people? I want more silos of people to talk to. No, of course not. As a customer, that was a crap experience. So then why did the brand do it? Why are we doing this for 30 years? Well, because humans had to do the work, and there's no one human that can do all those things for me. Like it's literally a unicorn. I can't train someone to be an SDR, an AE, a procurement, a product marketer, a CSM. So we said, well, we need humans. Humans have to specialize so they can be good at something. So we're going to specialize all these humans through this funnel, right? It leads to a horrible experience. When I file my support ticket, they don't know what the salesperson sold me. They don't know what the procurement person cared about in the legal department, right? They don't know what my CSM's helping me achieve in my next goal. The thing I'm obviously getting at here is that an agent can be your partner through the entire customer, the same one. They know everything we've ever talked about. They can do procurement. They can do the inbound SDR. They can be my AE. They can be my CSM. They can handle my support tickets. And every time they talk to me, they know everything about me. They know everything we've talked about and what my priorities are. They know my whole team, right? So back to the org, well, marketing owned a piece of this, sales owned a piece, procurement owned a piece, CSMs owned a piece. Like, these functions are gone. I just have one agent that I talk to that knows me, and that's like the best customer experience. Like, back to the human versus agent thing, wouldn't it be awesome if you could hire a human who was the world's best product marketer, SDR, AE, procurement, CSM, onboarding, everything, and I could hire one of those for every single customer, and they just sat on the customer's doorstep, and when they opened the door, they're like, I'm here, what do you need? Or they waited for the phone to call. That's what we have now, right? And so there's no marketing anymore. There's just the customer experience agent.
So what you just outlined, you articulated that really well. What does that mean for the organization in 2028?
Right. Like, I think this is where I don't know how it all lands, but behind that agent, let's sort of talk about like how this thing would actually work. Behind that agent, there's a series of like strategic objectives that humans need to give that agent about each of the phases of this customer experience, right? This thing isn't just your best friend. It needs to also help the company achieve its financial goals and business objectives and everything, in addition to being a great experience for the customer. So maybe marketing has input about strategy on a part of that funnel into this agent and says, when you're talking to the customer, make sure that you really highlight our differentiation against the competitors, right? And this is probably true when they're top of the funnel as well as when they're an actual customer. But that's a domain that marketing typically would own, is like product positioning, right? And so, and maybe the sales leader is like, great, we really need to improve win rates in this market segment. So what are we going to strategically do with our sales agent to go get that done, right? So maybe there's still functional like owners of things because that's how the business looks at things. But that's the kind of input you would give to the agent. Like you want, these are our goals this quarter, which would include conversion rates by segment and winning against these competitors and things like that, right? So I think that's maybe where we head, is like you're telling these agents what you want to have happen, just like a human would. They're coming back with like real world boots on the ground feedback. Like, look, we've been trying to position you against the competitor, but nobody believes it. We got to improve our product better because we're not actually winning there. And you're telling a story that's not real. That's like what an SDR might tell you. And that's what an agent's going to tell you, right?
Adam, I'm curious, what do you think? I mean, we're coming to the end of our time with Aaron, but given his answer, you and I have started to talk about this, but I'm curious, did Aaron's answer make you think about the future of the marketing department or the future of organizations differently?
Yeah, I mean, what Aaron's saying, which makes sense to me, is that whether you're a functional leader, a functional independent contributor or not, you become more of an outcome manager as opposed to a task manager or job manager. You think much more in terms of outcomes as opposed to tasks and jobs. Tasks and jobs always have led to outcomes, but you had to be, as Aaron pointed out really eloquently, as humans, we aren't generally super intelligent across every domain and across every function, and even within a function. So we have to be good at our tasks and our jobs. And whereas if the AI can be good at the tasks and the jobs, and we as humans can be abstracted up to being more of an outcome manager. So we understand what the company is trying to achieve. We understand what the function is trying to achieve. What I heard Aaron saying is it might even change the nature of what we call functions and the role of functions. But even if it doesn't, even within those functions, they become much more outcome managers than task and job managers. And either way, you become a manager. Like management skill becomes a thing. Yeah, like that isn't, I mean, it is the case for managers theoretically right now, but it's not the case for people that aren't senior managers. And it becomes a skill you have to have, right? Like, I mean, Andy, you and I do this because our career paths have led us to be managers for a lot of our career. So we sit in meetings with other humans all day thinking about like, what is the point of this meeting? And what am I trying to achieve with my company? What am I trying to achieve with this meeting? So we're thinking in terms of outcome and output management anyways, whereas that's going to be the case for everybody all the time if you've got these agents. I do have, as we come to the end, I have one last question for Aaron, and maybe we can bring it home, which is,
all right, hold on, because you have one last question. I have one last question. So let's because we only have time for one question. What's your question?
Okay. Well, my question is, how reliable, how realistic, and where are we in the time scale to these agents being able to do that? We just described a scenario. Oh yeah, I got this team of agents and they're doing this stuff. But in my experience today, when we talk about in the spectrum of agents like OpenClaw and, Manus and, Claude Cowork and Code, whatever you want to call the cutting edge version of the spectrum of agents, they have varying capabilities today, varying reliability, varying overall ability to do the things we just described. Like, where are we? My question is, where are we in this reality of these agents being able to be coworkers? That was my question, Andy. I don't know, maybe you have
it's a good question. Go, Aaron, give a succinct answer, and then I'm going to get my question in.
Okay, I'll go. I'm not good at brevity. I'll do my best. You're fine. The technology I will basically say is there. We could split hairs on some use cases, but the fundamental technology of these agents is there. You show me a problem of an agent, I told it to do something and look what it did. We see this on LinkedIn all the time. You show me one of those problems, I will show you a problem with context, not a problem with technology. So if you give me an outcome you want, and this is back to the management thing, it's like, is it the team's fault or the leader's fault? It's the leader's fault for not giving clear enough right instructions to the agentic team, in my view. Now, there's probably some outliers, like, I'm being a little bombastic and saying the tech's completely there. There are probably some things that it can't do, but for most of what we do day to day in business, it can do. If you're inventing new drugs and stuff like that, like maybe you still want humans doing some of the work, but like run of the mill business, as long as it's done digitally, robots are different, then we're pretty much there. That's what I say. And you got to have the right context.
Right on.
All right. My question, Aaron, is for CMOs and to a lesser extent CEOs, what concrete advice do you have for them as it relates to agentic marketing and what they should be doing in the next 90 days?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I see, even in my organization and definitely in our customers and everything, is just, and I think is a really big focus area for most executive teams and boards, is just adoption. Like, how much adoption are we getting across our company? Like what percentage of people are transferring? I loved this, like we become outcome managers, not task managers, Adam. That was great. So, if we take our company, what percentage of our people are managing outcomes versus tasks, right? Like last week, hours spent by the whole company, percentage managing tasks versus outcomes, right? Like that slider needs to go to 100% outcomes across everybody, like all the way, the intern, it doesn't matter. So if I think about that as our KPI, that's the thing we need to be. I think we all would say the slider's not far enough over in our organizations. And that's probably true for everybody. So like, I think we're trying to push that top down, or at least in most orgs they are. I think like we all know this, right? That's not the way to get people to do things. They have to want to do it. And so I think the creativity here is, how do you get your company, every individual, to want to be an outcome manager?
And so do you have a tip or something they should go read or some meeting they should hold? Like give them one concrete tip, Aaron.
Sure. Yeah. I think well, here's something I'm doing this month. I'm blocking off a week for the entire R&D organization. No one has any work assigned to them for that week. So this is like 70% developers, 30% PM and test, something like that. We are going to get into groups, okay? Like small teams of like 3. There's going to be someone in that team that's done some level of like agentic work, so has some experience with it. It's like a startup weekend. The company's going to pitch a bunch of ideas. Each of the teams is going to pick an idea, but here's the crux, okay? Back to the outcome thing. You can't manage any tasks. You have to get this thing done by only managing outcomes. Specifically, what that means is vibe coding. You have to go to Claude Code. You can't edit one line of code. You can't write one line of code. You have, like, if you want something changed, you have to tell it to do it, right? So you have to go get Claude Code to generate all of the code, all of the tests, all of the designs. So the other thing is you can't write design documents. You have to just you have to chat with Claude Code, get all the designs, everything, boom, boom, boom. And then what we're going to do is like day one is to be like, okay, guys, day one, we're going to create our specs and our designs. So at the end of the day, I'm going to go to each team and say, show me your specs and designs. Show me the conversation you had with Claude where you actually generated this. So prove to me that you didn't actually write it. Tomorrow, we're going to write code. You're going to manage a team of coding agents to go implement these things, right? And then the last 2 days is going to be the verification phase of like the test plan, automated tests, and everything it's called. Basically, it's like a hands-on, like but the leaders are participating and driving it. I think if people get a taste of this, they're going to love it, and so you just need to like force that taste, right?
Aaron, you want to give a short pitch for Pienza?
For Inflection?
I'm sorry, Reflection. Yes.
Yeah. If you're B2B and you want to quickly get to this 2028 future we're talking about, then go to inflection.io. That's what we do.
Great. Adam, we just had a great conversation with Aaron about agentic marketing, organizations, the future of work. What do you want to highlight for what's jumped out at you that you want to highlight?
I would say I totally agree with Aaron's fundamental premise and prediction that we've officially entered into an era where these AI tools are capable of doing work that used to only be able to be done by humans, actual work. And that line, just to take the whole conversation we just had, that line of, regardless if it can be better than humans or the same as humans, like we've crossed into that line. And so rather than, there's a lot of like societal, economic, and moral implications of that statement, which weigh heavy, I think, on all of us. And if it's true, then it changes the future of work pretty in the near future. It means that you have to start rethinking about yourself as an output and outcome manager and as a manager, period. And in a way that you probably never had before, unless you were a manager. And if you were a manager, you need to think about what you expect of your company and of your functions in a way that's different than before. That paradigm has shifted and it's coming at us really fast. And I thought Aaron did a great job of articulating sort of the realities of what that means and even thinking about it in phases. And I agree at the very end with Aaron's recommendation, which is like, one piece of advice is you've got to use this stuff. And just for a moment, block out the feelings you might have about that you're behind or what does this mean for you and your job. Like, get your hands on this and start using it. And that gives you the best opportunity to be in the position of being, part of that future of work where like you're managing these systems. Because if you're not using it and doing the kind of things Aaron just talked about on his sort of startup day hackathon idea, then you're just going to be like a deer in the headlights, and the rest of your coworkers and people are going to be like using these systems, and you're going to feel left behind. And there's no reason for that. Like, this is not hard to use technology. It uses simple, plain spoken words in English and prompts. And these agentic systems, they work the same way. Like, we're talking about them as agents, not chatbots, but they work the same way. You get yourself in front of an agent and you tell the agent what you want it to do. And you should, and Aaron said it well, like, you got to give it context. Like, a good prompt to a chatbot is give it context, give it example, explain what you're trying to accomplish. Don't just treat it like a Google search query. Same thing with working with an agent, but you learn that by working with an agent. So I really just, that was my biggest takeaway from the conversation today. But Aaron, I don't know if you agree with that.
I totally agree with it. And I think that the cool thing about where we are now, so we all started this journey, when ChatGPT came out, or even a little before that, maybe. The cool thing about working with agents now is like all the stuff you just talked about, Adam. You got to give it a good context. You got to tell it what you want. There's nuances. You can just ask it. Like, I don't know what I need to tell you, so tell me the types of things you need to know for me to go get this objective, right? Like, it's this meta thing of like, agents can help you create the context, right? And so,
yeah,
it's which is really cool. And at one point, it didn't do that, and you had to like kind of have some kind of like this like homegrown skills here. But you can just say like, here's my outcome. Like, what are the things I need to tell you to make sure that I get that outcome the way I want it to happen, and
that's right, Aaron. We say that all the time in our boot camps. We say, if you don't know how to work with the AI, just ask it how I should work with it. But to explain what you're trying to accomplish. All you have to do is, I'm trying to accomplish this. What's the best way to work with you? And so you got to at least be able to get out the outcome you're trying to get. But if you can do that, it can really help you.
I thought what Aaron had to say about the definition of agent and the way that conversation broke down really from Q&A to task to actually doing work and then ultimately to managing outcomes. I thought that was something that I wanted to highlight. I also thought that the conversation about customer experience and how agents are going to affect organizational structure was something I've always been super interested in that. And I think that that's something that I want to highlight for the audience. Thought it was an excellent conversation.
For everyone, in our audience, if you want to learn more about what Aaron's doing, go to inflection.io. If you want to learn more about what Forum 3 is doing, go to forum3.com, and you can join our community. You can join our newsletter. And thank you for joining us on this episode, Aaron, and everyone who listened.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Adam. This was super fun.
Great.
Thank you all to listening to AI First with Adam and Andy. For more resources on how to become AI First, you can visit our website, forum3.com, download case studies, research briefing, and executive summaries, and join our email list. Of course, we invite you to connect with our AI First community, a curated hub and network for leaders turning AI hype into action. We truly believe you can't overinvest in AI learning.